The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Do money-hungry vultures circle Neverland hoping to feast on the king of pop? Ex-wife number 2 paints Jackson as the prey, not the predator. Hello, I'm James Curtis. Welcome to E's coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. Debbie Rowe, Jackson's ex, hurried into the Santa Maria courtroom. Then, with his mother and father by his side, Michael Jackson entered at a much more casual, leisurely pace. Back on the stand, the former Mrs. Jackson's second day of testimony was even more explosive than the first, if that's even possible, folks. Here's what she told the jury about appearing in the rebuttal video, according to the courtroom transcripts.
All right. What is it that you're intending to represent in this interview?
Michael as a wonderful person, and as a great father, and generous and caring.
All right. Did you have information as to Michael Jackson as a wonderful father?
As I've known him?
Yes.
Yes.
When was the last time you'd actually talked with him?
In 1999.
All right. This was in early 2003, is that correct?
Correct.
When was the last time you saw him interact with the children?
1991. I'm sorry, 1999.
In the course of this interview, did you represent yourself as still being a part of the family?
Yes, I did.
Was that true?
No, it was not.
Why did you do it?
To protect the children and to try to keep the media and questions away and out of their focus, and to make sure that I could do whatever I could, even at a distance.
Well, folks, there you have it, the answer to yesterday's cliffhanger about what Debbie Rowe lied about during that interview. Now, Debbie Rowe is about to refer to somebody named Mark Schaffel. Now, our regular viewers, all you folks, will recall that Schaffel was one of the King of Pop's associates.
Did you make any contact with anybody about seeing your children within the next, say, 30 days or beyond?
Objection. Leading. Overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Schaffel, I would call...
How often? I'm sorry.
I would call him almost weekly. I didn't want to be a nudge or piss him off, so I would call him and chat him up and say, by the way, are they back? When can I see them? Because it was my understanding they were out of town.
For what period of time did you continue to contact Mr. Schaffel about that?
Your Honor, we object. Make a motion to exclude.
I'd like to respond to it, even if it's sidebar.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Go ahead.
About 9 months.
Did you ever see your children?
No, I did not.
To this day, have you seen your children?
No, I have not.
Interesting, Howard. Emotional exclude, not sure what that's about, but after this testimony is given what the prosecutor said it was supposed to be about, it's a wonder why there's not a motion to just strike the entire testimony, because it's not what the prosecutor said it was going to be.
I'm sure in retrospect, the district attorney's office would have just soon not called Debbie Rowe. But it appears what they're trying to establish is that she would lie and conceive of fabrications to help Michael.
Well, we did get the answer, though.
Can't be trusted.
We did get the answer to her assertion that she did lie during the video. She lied about still being part of the family, apparently.
Right, but actually I think there was a motion early on to exclude, because this is not at all what the prosecution said she was going to testify to. Not at all.
Right, but you can't make that motion before she... you can make the motion before she testifies, but the point about making the motion to just strike this witness's entire testimony, have the jurors essentially act as they never even heard it, is based on the fact that the prosecutor said she was going to corroborate Gavin's mom, and she didn't do that.
What's happened here is the witness didn't perform as expected, and now the district attorney's office has to do whatever they can to impeach her credibility, and then they can argue that she wasn't honest when she testified.
But how could they expect it? This witness seems to be exactly what she is. I can't imagine that she ever said something different to the prosecution, such that they would believe she was going to testify one way and got there and testified differently. She's very straightforward. She's very direct. She seems to be a very credible witness. I can't imagine why the prosecution called her and made the arguments that they did, that she was going to say the things that they thought she would say.
And that, folks, is indeed the question of the day. Prosecutors, what were you thinking when you called this witness? My partners in crime will answer that question on the other side of this. Next, Ms. Rowe is a witness for the prosecution, but on cross-examination, she doesn't seem to be all that hostile toward defense attorney Tom Mesereau.
Okay. And you have previously commented that you thought Mr. Schaffel was using Mr. Jackson, true?
Oh, yeah.
You thought he was using him manipulating him.
I'm going to object as lack of foundation. She just said she just met him. Also improper opinion.
Overruled.
You told the sheriffs that, in your opinion, Mark Schaffel was continually trying to take advantage of Michael Jackson, true?
Correct.
And you thought he was manipulating Michael Jackson to make lots of money, right?
Yes.
You thought Dieter and Conitzer were taking advantage of Michael Jackson, true?
Yes.
And you thought they were trying to manipulate Michael Jackson to make a lot of money, right?
Yes.
Was it your perception, based upon what you observed of Schaffel, Dieter, and Conitzer, that those three were working together?
Oh, yeah.
You definitely got that impression?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And was it your impression that those three were working together to find ways to use Michael Jackson's name so they could profit?
Yes.
And at one point you told the sheriffs that you thought Michael Jackson was, in some ways, very removed from what those guys were doing, right?
In my past knowledge, he's removed from the handlers, the people who are taking care of business, and they make all the decisions. There's a number of times they don't consult him.
And you thought these three guys, Schaffel, Dieter, and Conitzer, were doing just that, didn't you?
Very strongly.
Next, did Debbie Rowe have as much trouble warning Michael Jackson about the people around him as Gavin's mom, Janet, had trying to send out those clues? Remember those? About being trapped at Neverland.
Do you recall if around this time you ever tried to warn Michael Jackson about Schaffel, Conitzer, and Dieter?
I did. I tried to go through my old boss. And actually, when I did call, I was told that be careful of Mark.
And your old boss was Dr. Klein?
Arnold Klein, yes. K-L-E-I-N.
What you're saying, you tried to communicate with Michael through Dr. Klein to warn him about what these three characters were doing to Michael?
Or to look and see if he was aware of what was going on, if he even knew that I was still trying to see the children.
Okay. And one of the problems you had was that because of the custody issues, you were supposed to talk through attorneys, right?
Correct.
And that created a problem in your ability to communicate with Michael, right?
It was difficult, yes.
Okay. And I believe you said yesterday you've stayed his friend, right?
I've always considered him my friend.
And you still do, right?
Yeah. If he'd talk to me. Sorry.
And without question, the communicating through lawyers has created problems with you.
Have you met Mr. Hall? Extreme problems.
Okay, okay. You're blaming the lawyers for a lot of that, right?
Have you met Mr. Hall? You don't want to.
Sean Chapman, Holly, obviously, and we've already established, probably ad nauseum for your purposes at least, that this witness did not do what prosecutors thought or wanted her to do. So the question now becomes, how did this happen?
I can't imagine how this happened. What's interesting about this last piece of testimony, we've talked about the fact the prosecution has not shown a connection between Michael Jackson and these unindicted co-conspirators. She takes it one step further. There is no connection. These guys are operating on their own, in their own best interest, and sometimes against Michael Jackson.
Okay, good point. How did it happen, Howard? How did the prosecution find themselves in this situation with this witness?
It happens in lawsuits. Trust me, the prosecutors wish they'd never called this lady. She didn't perform as they expected.
But is it lack of preparation? Is it taking your eye off the ball? Is it not doing your homework? What happened?
I have to believe what's going to happen here is there'll be testimony presented that she told them one thing and testified differently. Because if they don't do that, their credibility is suspect.
And we have to remember, taking the entirety of the context of the prosecutor's opening statement, when the prosecutor, Tom Sneddon himself, said, look, Debbie Rowe will tell you that she was coached, she was scripted, and if she doesn't, or in addition to that, her attorney will tell you that. Will the prosecutors call that attorney? When we return, who were the real bad guys in Neverland? Debbie, name some names. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Prosecutors hope that the former Mrs. Jackson, Debbie Rowe, would help them convict Michael Jackson, or at least you would suppose that's why they called her. But it sounds like she'd be much more helpful if the district attorney was trying to nail Jackson's business associates. You know, all those unindicted co-conspirators that we've been talking about for weeks now. Here's how Rowe responded to questions from defense attorney Tom Mesereau, according to the courtroom transcripts.
How did you learn that Schaffel was trying to make millions of dollars from the footage of your interview?
He told me he was paid for it. He told me that part of the money that was made from it went for a debt that Mr. Jackson had owed him. I later found out that he told Ronald and Dieter that I wanted $100,000 for doing the interview, and I believe a check was cut, not to me. I wouldn't have taken it, and he kept it.
And how did you learn this information?
Some of it was from Ian, some of it was from Mark himself.
Did Schaffel, in your mind, ever ask you to help him in his business dealings with Mr. Jackson?
No. He just bragged about either how he took advantage of an opportunity that I'm sure he knew nothing about, or how he was going to do this, that, or the other thing to make sure that Michael's career was saved, and things of that nature.
Did Schaffel tell you that he was involved in business matters with Dieter?
Yes.
Did Schaffel tell you he was involved in business matters with Konitzer?
Yes, in Europe.
Okay. And did you ever get the impression he was not giving Michael Jackson all the information about what he was up to?
He was like everybody else around Mr. Jackson. Yeah, he wasn't telling him everything.
Why did you think Schaffel was calling you?
To placate me. To say that, oh no, I'm working on it, you'll be seeing the kids, Michael's very excited about it, everything's going to be great, they're still in Florida, you know. As soon as they get home, you guys will be together.
And you didn't think he was being truthful, right?
Obviously, he's full of Sorry. I'm sorry, Your Honor.
How do you really feel about it, Ms. Rowe? Next, everyone seems to want a piece of the King of Pop.
Schaffel bragged to you about the large sums of money he was going to make off of Michael Jackson, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He bragged about making millions of dollars off of Michael Jackson, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He did that many times, didn't he?
Constantly.
Did Dieter brag as well about the millions he was going to make off of Michael Jackson?
He wasn't as, he was more subtle about it and spoke of it as plans for Michael, not actually to take from Michael. So it's a matter of semantics. I'm saying, you know, I'm going to do it for Michael.
Did Dieter ever tell you that he and Konitzer were going to take over all of Michael Jackson's affairs?
That was their plan because he'd been mishandled.
Did Dieter ever tell you, don't call Michael Jackson. If you have any questions about him, talk to me?
I wouldn't be allowed to call him, but if I had any concerns, I would. He said, you know, please call me.
Howard Weitzman, you once represented Michael Jackson. Your firm, Sean Chapman Holler, was also involved in representation for a period of time. Were these guys, Schaffel, Konitzer, Dieter, around when any of you were involved with Michael Jackson?
No. But I have to tell you something. Michael has consistently surrounded himself with people to help him, and he does stay one removed. At least that was my experience with him. I had direct contact with Michael because of the various matters I was involved in, but a lot of people do not have direct contact with him.
Yeah.
What fascinates me about all of this is that I guess the portrayal is Michael's one removed from what was going on.
Sounds like a couple removed, doesn't it, Sean?
Yeah, it does sound that way. You know, in addition to her being a bad witness for the prosecution, she's also a great witness for the defense. She gets to get out that Michael Jackson is generous to a fault, that he's a good father, and that he's the victim of opportunists. And of course, we can take it one step further there. One of these opportunists may have been Gavin's mom.
Absolutely. Certainly can make that connection.
Now, I guess she established that he didn't let her see the kids, and that's a bad thing. Other than that, I don't know what she established that might help the prosecution.
Well, and she
that's
agreed
really
to that. I mean, she agreed to not seeing the kids. It's not like he did it in
and that's really a side issue, but how will it affect this trial? One thing that I'm impressed with this woman, she seems to be bright and very strong-minded. That is, she knows her own mind. She knows what she wants to say, as you said earlier, Sean, and nobody's really going to be able to influence her that.
Nobody can tell her what to do.
Exactly. As cross-examination continues, did Debbie, however, make a deal with the devil?
Did you ever tell Schaffel, I don't like what you're doing to Michael, or words to that effect?
If I had said that, then I wouldn't have been able to find out what he was doing and try to get word to whoever was handling him. You guys are going to get screwed.
So what you were trying to do was make Schaffel think he could maintain a friendship with you, but what you really wanted to do was get information from him?
Yeah. He was out to hurt Michael and in addition would hurt my children.
And did you feel Dieter was trying to hurt Michael and also your children?
I think they're opportunistic vultures.
Would that be Dieter, Konitzer, and Schaffel?
Okay, you can do them alphabetically if you'd like.
You're talking about the three of them, right?
All of them.
Who else are you referring to as vultures besides those three?
If it's a personal opinion, does it count?
I'm going to object as beyond the scope of direct examination and speculative and improper opinion.
Sounds like she's got a long list. I think I'll sustain the objection.
And I'll object because this is really bad for me, Your Honor, so I don't want her answering this question. Ouch, that's going to leave a mark. Next, who is the real man in the mirror? The former Mrs. Jackson says she knows.
Do you remember telling the officer who interviewed you, Michael is very, very easily manipulated, especially if he's scared?
Yes.
You were trying to tell the officers that Michael was being taken advantage of by these people, weren't you?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer.
I'm sorry.
You were trying to tell the officer that you thought Michael was being taken advantage of by these people, right?
Yes.
In that interview, what kind of a person did you say Michael was?
Generous to a fault. Giving and kind.
Anything else do you recall saying?
Good father. Great with kids. Put other people ahead of him. Things like that.
If you can, do you remember anything else you said about Michael?
He's a brilliant businessman. There's different Michaels. There's like my Michael.
Do you want some water?
And the Michael that everyone else sees.
And that would be the public Michael.
Yes.
That would be Michael the entertainer, right?
Michael the entertainer, yeah.
Whoa.
Can't get more powerful than that, can you?
Wow.
No.
I mean, it's good character evidence for Michael Jackson,
It is.
which you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get in. She gets in. You know, we've all heard, every lawyer knows you never ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
This takes this to a whole new level. They've called a witness. They didn't know what she was going to say. I mean, this is
Not only
extremely
that,
damaging to the
they
prosecution.
made representations to this jury about what she was going to say and how she was going to help convince them that Michael was a bad person and guilty of these charges. If they don't call the officer or some people who interviewed her to say her testimony is different than what you've heard, I think this witness has almost devastated the prosecution's credibility.
Have they indeed been decimated? And as we referred to, or as I referred to earlier, the prosecution also said in their opening statement that they would call the witnesses, Debbie Rowe's attorney, to corroborate what they said Debbie Rowe was going to say about having been scripted and been coached. They did call that attorney. We'll tell you on the other side what that attorney said. When we return, can the prosecution succeed in an apparent attempt to tear their witness away from Michael Jackson's side? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hell hath no fury like the King of Pop's ex-wife scorned. That seems to be the district attorney's theory, at least in the opening statement. But if Debbie Rowe still carries a torch for Jackson, is it Tom Snetton who will get burned? Hello, I'm James Curtis, and welcome to E's coverage of the Michael Jackson trial. She may have blown this case wide open, but did Debbie damage the defense or pulverize the prosecution? Before we hear the dramatic testimony from Jackson ex-wife number 2, we want to remind everyone about the charge at the heart of this case. Here's what the young accuser Gavin told jurors about what happened in the King of Pop's bedroom, according to the courtroom transcripts.
They couldn't hear what you had to say, Gavin. I know it's hard. Just lean right into it.
He told me that males have to masturbate.
All right. Now, when he said that, what, if anything, did he do or say after that?
He said that if I masturbated, and I told him that I didn't, and then he said if I didn't know how, that he would do it for me.
And what did you say?
And I said I didn't really want to.
All right. And then what happened?
And then he said it was okay, that it was natural, and that it's natural for boys to do it.
All right. What happened after that?
And then so we were under the covers, and I had his pajamas on because he had this big thing of pajamas, and he gave me his pajamas.
Okay.
And so I was under his covers, and then that's when he put his hand in my pants, and then he started masturbating me.
Could you see Mr. Jackson while he was doing that to you?
Not really. I wasn't really looking at him.
Could you tell whether or not he was moving?
Well, he was himself?
Yes.
I wasn't really looking at him. I could kind of feel him moving, but I mean, I never really saw him moving.
Gavin addressed the charge of molestation, but his mother Janet testified about being prisoner at Neverland and about being coerced and scripted when she participated in the now infamous rebuttal video. And when it came time for the district attorney to back up Janet's testimony, Jackson heard the phrase that every man charged with a crime fears most. The prosecution calls the defendant's ex-wife.
Do you prefer to be called Miss Rowe?
Debbie, please.
All right, but in court we're a little more formal.
Oh.
In terms of surnames, do you go by Miss Rowe?
Yes.
Do you know the defendant, Michael Jackson, seated to my right with the long, dark hair?
Yes, I do.
How do you know Mr. Jackson?
We've been friends, and we were married.
When were you married to Mr. Jackson?
From 1997 to 1999.
For what period of time did you know Mr. Jackson prior to that?
Probably 20 years or more.
Were you friends with Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Are you the mother of his two children?
Yes, I am.
The two oldest children?
Yes, I am.
And their names are what?
Michael Joseph Jackson, Jr. and Paris Michael Catherine Jackson.
And when were you divorced from Mr. Jackson?
October, I believe October 1999.
Did you ever live with Mr. Jackson during the course of your marriage?
We never shared a home.
Did you live with Mr. Jackson prior to that marriage?
We never shared an apartment.
At the time that the marriage was dissolved, was there an understanding or an agreement as to child custody?
I'm sorry?
Was there an understanding or agreement as to child custody?
Yes.
And who had custody of the two children?
Michael did.
Did you have visitation of the two children?
Yes, I did.
And what was the extent of the visitation as determined by that divorce?
Every 45 days for 8 hours.
All right. Did you, in fact, see the two children every 45 days for 8 hours?
I tried.
Next, did the King of Pop's roadies see his children more often than their mother?
All right. Were there difficulties in being able to do so?
Yes.
What kinds of difficulties?
There were times that children and Michael would be out of the country. And I was working at the time, and if they were in South Africa, I would not have enough time to fly to where they were and then return home in time to be at work.
Were you able to make up that 8-hour period when they returned?
No. It was pushed off until the next 45 days.
For what period of time did that continue, that custody arrangement?
I believe 1.5 years.
At some point in time, did you voluntarily agree to give up parental rights as to those two children?
Yes.
And when was that? Can you tell us?
I believe 2001.
And why did you do that?
The visitations were not comfortable. We were hooked up at a hotel. When I would bring things to do, finger painting, coloring, or whatever, the nanny was always very concerned with the children getting dirty. I would bring T-shirts or something to put over their clothes. And the environment was very sterile. It wasn't a quality relationship.
Did you ask to have more time with the kids?
Yes.
Objection, leading.
Overruled. The answer was yes.
Sorry.
Next question. That's all right.
And was that request granted?
No.
And tell me why you made the decision to give up parental rights as to the two children at that time.
I didn't believe that...
Objection, relevance, opinion.
Sustained.
At some point in time, when was the last time that you saw the two children?
2.5, 3 years ago. I'm not sure. I don't remember the dates.
Now on to the rebuttal video and the now familiar names Mark, Ronald, and Dieter, all associates of Michael Jackson.
Were you contacted by somebody with regard...
Mark Schaffel, yes.
Mark Schaffel called you.
And Ronald Conitzer.
You then had a conversation with Ronald Conitzer as well?
For a brief moment. Michael was with him.
Did Michael Jackson then get on the telephone?
Yes, he did.
Objection. Leading.
Overruled.
What did Mr. Jackson say to you in the course of this conversation?
He told me there was a video coming out, and it was full of lies, and would I help? And I said, as always, yes. I asked him if he was okay. I was very upset.
When was the last time you had talked with Michael Jackson?
The day of our divorce.
Next, was the king the boss?
What did he tell you about what was going to happen?
That there was a bad video coming out. I did not, he didn't go into any more detail about that.
Did you ask him what it was about?
No.
Did you ask him if it dealt with him personally, Mr. Jackson?
I assumed it did.
Okay. Now, he asked you for some assistance. Is that correct?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
And did he describe to you in any detail or particularity what it was he wanted you to do?
No, he did not.
Okay. Did he tell you to follow anybody's direction?
He asked me...
Objection. Leading.
I'm sorry.
Sustained.
What did he tell you to do?
He asked me to work with Ronald, Dieter, and Mark.
When Michael Jackson needed her, his second wife must have been inspired by a refrain from one of the King of Pop's greatest hits, I'll Be There.
All right. Let's go back to the conversation again with Mr. Jackson.
Okay.
Before you hung up the phone or before your telephone conversation ended, you said specifically about the children. Tell me what it was that he told you about the children with regards to visitation.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer.
Go ahead.
When I said, are you okay? And are the children okay? And he said, yeah, we're okay. And I said, can I see you and everything, and the children, when everything is over with? And he said, yes.
Did you want to see Mr. Jackson and the children?
Absolutely.
Did he give you any other direction as to when that might be?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
No.
Did anybody offer you anything in response to your doing this?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Do you mean quid pro quo?
Yes.
No. I was excited to see Michael and the children when all of this was over.
Why did you do this interview?
I promised him that I would always be there for him and the children.
Next, how shocked is the prosecution when Debbie Rowe uses the F word?
What was your expectation with regards to your children in terms of your completing this interview?
Objection. Leading. Foundation.
Sustained.
Did you have any expectations with regard to your kids at all?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled.
Yes.
What was that? What were your expectations?
To be reintroduced to them and to be reacquainted with their dad.
You wanted to be reacquainted with Mr. Jackson as well?
Yes.
Why?
He's my friend.
When we return, caught in a lie and fear of the henchman. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. The prosecutors say the rebuttal video was scripted. The accuser's mother, Janet, says the rebuttal video was scripted. And the former Mrs. Jackson was called to say that the rebuttal video was scripted. But what was Debbie Rowe's story when she actually testified? Here's what the jurors heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
All right. Now, prior to the start of this interview, had you talked with anybody about the content of this interview? In other words, what was going to be asked of you?
No.
Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence. Leading and foundation.
Overruled. Do you want the question read back?
No. No, I did not want that.
Did you know what it was you were going to be saying?
No.
Next, Debbie declares her independence.
Who is Ian Drew?
He was someone that was going to interview me.
And was he somebody you knew prior to that day as well?
No.
Did you have any preliminary conversation with him prior to the commencement of this interview?
Absolutely not.
Was that by your choice?
Yes.
And why is that? Why was that?
Objection. Foundation 352, leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Go ahead.
Because I didn't want anyone to be able to come back to me and say that my interview was rehearsed, that someone told me what to say. Mr. Jackson knows no one can tell me what to say. I tend to speak my own mind, and I didn't want the interview to be construed as something other than what it was, which was a cold interview.
At some point in time, were you given any kind of a list of questions?
Objection.
Overruled.
It was offered to me, and I declined it.
Now, the prosecution finally gets a little bit of what they hope for from this witness.
Were you asked questions about Mr. Jackson?
Yes, I was.
Objection. Leading. Hearsay.
Overruled.
What questions that were asked of you about Mr. Jackson did you not give honest answers to?
Can you be more specific?
I can. Did he ask, were you asked questions about Mr. Jackson and his parenting of your two children?
Objection. Leading. Move to strike.
Overruled.
Did you understand the question? Would you like to hear it again?
Yes, I was asked the question.
May the court reporter repeat the question, Your Honor?
I think she understood the question, so...
I understood the question, and I said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She answered your question.
I'm sorry. Were those the questions or among the questions that you did not answer honestly?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Now, who really stood between Debbie Rowe and her efforts to see her kids?
Did you make any contact with anybody about seeing your children within the next, say, 30 days or beyond?
Objection. Leading.
Overruled. You may answer.
Mr. Schaffel, I would call...
How often? I'm sorry.
I would call him almost weekly. I didn't want to be a nudge or piss him off, so I would call him and chat him up and say, by the way, are they back? When can I see them? Because it was my understanding they were out of town.
For what period of time did you continue to contact Mr. Schaffel about that?
Your Honor, we object. Make a motion to exclude.
I'd like to respond to it, even if it's sidebar.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Go ahead.
About 9 months.
Did you ever see your children?
No, I did not.
To this day, have you seen your children?
No, I have not.
Next, when Tom Mesro cross-examines this witness for the prosecution, does he seem to turn her away from the prosecution and toward the defense?
Okay. And you have previously commented that you thought Mr. Schaffel was using Mr. Jackson, true?
Oh, yeah.
You thought he was using him, manipulating him.
I'm going to object as lack of foundation. She just said she just met him. Also improper opinion.
Overruled.
You told the sheriffs that, in your opinion, Mark Schaffel was continually trying to take advantage of Michael Jackson, true?
Correct.
And you thought he was manipulating Michael Jackson to make lots of money, right?
Yes.
You thought Dieter and Conitzer were taking advantage of Michael Jackson, true?
Yes.
And you thought they were trying to manipulate Michael Jackson to make a lot of money, right?
Yes.
Was it your perception, based upon what you observed of Schaffel, Dieter, and Conitzer, that those three were working together?
Oh, yeah.
You definitely got that impression?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And was it your impression that those three were working together to find ways to use Michael Jackson's name so they could profit?
Yes.
And at one point you told the sheriffs that you thought Michael Jackson was, in some ways, very removed from what those guys were doing, right?
In my past knowledge, he's removed from the handlers, the people who are taking care of business, and they make all the decisions. There's a number of times they don't consult him.
And you thought these three guys, Schaffel, Dieter, and Conitzer, were doing just that, didn't you?
Very strongly.
Next, do Rowe's attempts to warn Jackson about his staff sound just a little bit like the story that Gavin's mom told about sending clues?
Do you recall if around this time you ever tried to warn Michael Jackson about Schaffel, Conitzer, and Dieter?
I did. I tried to go through my old boss. And actually, when I did call, I was told that be careful of Mark.
And your old boss was Dr. Klein?
Arnold Klein, yes. K-L-E-I-N.
What you're saying, you tried to communicate with Michael through Dr. Klein to warn him about what these three characters were doing to Michael?
Or to look and see if he was aware of what was going on, if he even knew that I was still trying to see the children.
Okay. And one of the problems you had was that because of the custody issues, you were supposed to talk through attorneys, right?
Correct.
And that created a problem in your ability to communicate with Michael, right?
It was difficult, yes.
So, was Debbie trying to protect Jackson from his own people?
Did you ever tell Schaffel, I don't like what you're doing to Michael, or words to that effect?
If I had said that, then I wouldn't have been able to find out what he was doing and try to get word to whoever was handling him. You guys are going to get screwed.
So what you were trying to do was make Schaffel think he could maintain a friendship with you, but what you really wanted to do was get information from him?
Yeah. He was out to hurt Michael and in addition would hurt my children.
And did you feel Dieter was trying to hurt Michael and also your children?
I think they're opportunistic vultures.
Would that be Dieter, Konitzer, and Schaffel?
Okay, you can do them alphabetically if you'd like.
You're talking about the three of them, right?
All of them.
When we return, emotions heat up and the prosecution strikes back. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Did prosecutors think that the former Mrs. Jackson had an axe to grind? Well, she very well may have, but did Debbie Rowe use that axe to chop up the case against her ex? Here's how she answered questions from defense attorney Tom Mesereau according to the courtroom transcripts.
Do you remember telling the officer who interviewed you, Michael is very, very easily manipulated, especially if he's scared?
Yes.
You were trying to tell the officers that Michael was being taken advantage of by these people, weren't you?
Objection. Asked and answered.
Overruled. You may answer.
I'm sorry.
You were trying to tell the officer that you thought Michael was being taken advantage of by these people, right?
Yes.
In that interview, what kind of a person did you say Michael was?
Generous, to a fault, giving, and kind.
Anything else do you recall saying?
Good father, great with kids, put other people ahead of him, things like that.
If you can, do you remember anything else you said about Michael?
He's a brilliant businessman. There's different Michaels. There's like my Michael.
Do you want some water?
And the Michael that everyone else sees.
And that would be the public Michael.
Yes.
That would be Michael the entertainer, right?
Michael the entertainer, yeah.
Now, this may be the ultimate rhetorical question, but here goes. Has calling Debbie Rowe backfired on the prosecution? On redirect examination, Assistant District Attorney Ron Zonin tries to salvage the situation.
Do you still like Michael Jackson?
I have very strong memories and feelings for the Michael that I've known but haven't seen since 1999. But those are based on my feelings. We haven't spoken.
All right. Is it the case that the sum total of your communication with Mr. Jackson since 1999, 6 years ago, was a 2.5-minute conversation that you described?
Correct.
And that was a conversation where he asked you to participate in this video. Is that correct?
To work with Ronald, Dieter, and Mark.
Is it clear to you that he understood that you wanted to see your children?
Yes.
All right. Did he ever call you to say that...
No.
Or to invite you up to come see the children?
No, he didn't.
Who do you believe is responsible for your not being able to see the children?
Objection. Relevance Foundation.
Overruled.
You can answer the question.
He's their father. Ultimately, it's his decision. I don't want to believe that. I want to believe that it's other people. I want to believe it's Mark Schaffel threatening him that I want to take the children. Things like that.
Did his exile queen save the king of pop, or did Debbie Rowe simply seize this opportunity to get back in Jackson's life and become reacquainted with her children? Of course, only the jury's answers matter. Join me tomorrow night, along with our panel of legal experts at 7:30 p.m. to debate the latest dramatic developments in the Michael Jackson trial.